interventional nephrology means different connotations in different places. It is not only about finding more space for us to practice and more chances for us to get involved with patient, but something more, it takes us, empowers us to do service to unreachable areas, go start institutions and make it reach more people. So I always believe that interventional nephrology has potential role in filling up the gaps and lessening the paradoxes of an unequal distribution of healthcare in our place. And these were the things I used to consider important about interventional nephrology, but there are some more things also. See, renal disease is a chronic and multi-system disease, and essentially we'll have to involve other specialists. But whatever said and done, we nephrologists will be tied to the patient inescapably till the end. And for a meaningful approach to these patients regarding diagnosis and choosing therapeutic options, etc., holistic approach is necessary. And in that regard, it is said that other specialists who are with us may not be very familiar with the patient choices and other practicalities, and many of them are reluctant to take full responsibility of our patients. So just to give an example, just imagine PD versus HD versus transplant. If only different people are involved with each one of this modality, so the patient may not get the best. So whoever is strong and whoever is more vocal will lead the show. And we also know the problems of choosing between AVF and AV graft, and the priorities in different places differ due to various other issues. And two issues which I don't know whether you realize, renal artery stenosis is one area where absence of a clear leader who is in charge is taking a big toll, and there is a lot of misdiagnosis, underdiagnosis and mistreatment of renal artery stenosis. We'll see some of it through my lecture today. And again, a newer innovation, renal denervation, is suffering from the same problem because it is with the hands of the cardiologists and their priorities are different. So good modality may be lost because of their over enthusiasm. So who is in charge is important, and I wish nephrologists are in charge of all aspects of treatment in renal patients so that the best can be given to our patient. And also, in having our hand in all these areas will give more room for innovations. For example, I will take renal artery stenosis. See, the pattern, Parvus-Tardus pattern, it can easily be diagnosed by a nephrologist if only he is involved with doing ultrasound and Doppler. And when I started doing, I made some cutoffs, empirical cutoffs of time to peak more than 100 milliseconds and acceleration time less than 100 millimeters per second. I could pick up a very good number of renal artery stenosis. The sensitivity may not be 100%, but it was very specific for reversible renal artery stenosis. And say this is the Parvus-Tardus pattern. And once, if you are able to catch these patients in more numbers, they can be very definitely usefully treated. I will show you examples. Likewise, if you are involved in this investigation, so this is an Doppler sample of RPGN on one side and acute interstitial nephritis. Although the acute interstitial nephritis patient had not very severe renal failure, but this RPGN patient had creatinine of 6 or 7. But you see the resistive index, it is much more in interstitial nephritis. This gave a clue that this renal Doppler could differentiate between a glomerular disease and interstitial nephritis. And this was presented in one of the meetings as early as 2003. Why I'm trying to tell this is only if we have these tools in our hand, we may be able to pick up these small points and present. You can never expect a radiologist to pick up something like this. And the scope for intervention is many. We started with venous catheters, tunneled and otherwise. Then we were doing renal biopsies. Then we went on to PD catheter. After that only we started doing ultrasounds, which was much later. Then there are many who are doing AV fistulas and few who are involved in cath lab interventions. But I feel that everyone should be familiar with ultrasound and Doppler of our patients, and we should be doing all renal biopsies and all venous catheters and PD catheter insertion. And wherever possible, whoever is trained can take up AV fistula creation, and whoever has access to a cath lab, about which we will see, I think we should get into cath lab also. And doing a renal angio and angioplasty and stenting, it should be within our reach because femoral artery puncture is not new to us. Putting in an arterial sheath by Seldinger technique is going to be easy for us. Putting in a guide wire and diagnostic catheters, this renal double curved catheters, this RCA catheters, they're all pre-curved so nicely that they very easily fall into place into the renal arteries. And it is not difficult at all. You don't need a lot of training also for a diagnostic renal angio. And once you do a renal angio, you can assess the length, stenosis, etc., about which we'll see. See, this is right renal artery being angio being done. You see that the stenosis is so severe, but you see the perfusion of the kidney and the pattern of the arterial structure is so nice. So this would definitely go in for a much severe block or complete block and lead to renal failure. So if you can catch this patient at this stage, so this is a left renal artery stenosis, and again you see the nice nephrogram you are getting. That means in spite of such a severe stenosis, the renal kidney is able to function. And this is a guide wire being put in, and a stent is placed across the lesion. And after adjusting the position of the balloon, the stent with the balloon in situ, you dilate and deploy the stent. So you take some time here because it has to be placed very precisely, because into the aorta it has to butt in a little so that it won't get slipped. And I have seen instances where there are renal artery stenosis on either side, and in the same sitting I have done renal artery stenting on both sides. You see that the left side, the stenosis was so tight, it took the balloon such a long time to expand. And we generally, nephrologists think that renal artery stenosis is not common, and it is being diagnosed only in cath labs by cardiologists, and many a time they don't require treatment. But I believe that it is not so. If found in right time, when there is when the renal function is adequate, and if the stenosis is more than 90%, if their kidneys are not contracted, I think it is still, there is a great role for intervention for renal artery stenosis. And only when you start doing Doppler yourself, you will come across more and more cases. This is one case where the cannulation of the artery was difficult from the femoral artery, so we had to come from the above, from the brachial artery, because the artery was angulated very acutely. So we successfully put in a stent reaching from via the brachial artery. Through the radial artery, it is difficult because most of the available catheters are not long enough to reach the renal artery from the radial artery. And this work on renal angiogram and angioplasty was presented in 2013 ASDIN, and where I compared the instances of renal artery stenosis diagnosed in my institution over a period of 10 years. And I had three groups. This is a very crowded slide, but I'll tell you briefly. One group was the number of patients I had diagnosed as renal artery stenosis before the advent of cath lab. So that was a mere 9. There were only 9 cases diagnosed for a period of 10 years when there was no cath lab available to me. After that, I had done 177 renal angiograms. At the same time, the cardiologist had done more than 2,000 angiograms for his coronary angio, and they always check the renal artery also. You see that I could pick up renal artery lesion in nearly 35% of these patients. So I was very selective by doing ultrasound, renal Doppler, the clinical picture, hypokalemia, asymmetry of the kidney, and so on. So it was worthwhile doing angiograms in this patient, because nearly 30 to 35% of them had more than 60-70% lesion. And some of them actually had creatinine of more than 2 and 2.2 by using contrast judiciously. Nothing happened to their GFR following the angiogram. And the unnecessary renal angioplasties by the cardiologist also will be stopped if only we enter this arena and start doing angiograms and take over management of renal artery stenosis all by ourselves. Because interventional radiologists may not be the ideal person, and cardiologists who come across this inadvertently are also won't be the right person. So we should be handling all these modalities: renal, ultrasound, Doppler, angio, and stenting. This is a case of transplant renal artery stenosis. My patient, you see, clinically they look so bland. Creatinine was 1.2 or 1.3. Only Doppler picked up the Parvus tortoise pattern. Successfully do a stent, and you see the difference in the Doppler pattern pre and post angiogram. This is pre, where you see the delay in the takeoff, and post. And there will be other indications also. This is actually doing angionecrosis of a renal tumor for my urology colleague. Once you are used to handling angiograms and angioplasties, you can help them by doing either coiling or putting in gel foam and necrosing the kidney, making it easy for them to do the nephrectomy. This is another interesting instance where it was AV fistula of different sorts. AV fistula created in the kidney by the nephrologist following biopsy. So you see the angiogram. You see, the rapid gush of blood from the arterial system to the venous system, and you see the venous emptying, which is generally not seen in an angiogram. So this was AV fistula in the kidney, and we went on to catheterize with small catheters reaching the terminal branches and putting in a coil, and the AV fistula was closed. So that also come into your ambit. And also, if you have bleeding following renal biopsy, if you are confident enough to do this procedure, you can boldly take them up for either coiling or putting in gel and sealing the bleeding. So this is after the coil. You see that there is no fistula. And there will be chances, if you have a deep vein thrombosis, you may be, if you are competent, you can put in an IVC filter. This was an IVC filter put by me in one of my patients. So you check the renal veins on either side, and the IVC filter has to be positioned just below this is the filter you see deployed. And to more practical area, fistulogram or the AV fistula, it is very easy. You don't even need a cath lab. All you need is a good C-arm and very simple things. And mostly I do my fistula angiogram initially. When they come back from dialysis or when they go for dialysis, I pull them up with the same dialysis fistula needle. I put in the dye and do fistula angiogram to see the difficulties, in non-maturing fistula and fistulas which are having suboptimal flow. So this is an angiogram. You see that very obviously there are multiple branches, side branches. Obviously this won't mature with so many side branches. And this is another fistula angiogram. You see again side branches, but again this is one major side branch. If you can tie this, patient will do good and the fistula will mature nicely. And either you can do coiling by angiogram, or if you are competent doing AV fistula, you can take them up for open tying. And this is the instance of justa anastomotic stenosis. You see the stenosis here. And generally when there is a stenosis, there will be side branching and failure to mature. So if you can tackle the stenosis successfully, so this is after putting in a cannula inside the sheath inside the fistula, I have put in a guide wire, and you see it is being a balloon is being put in across the lesion, and it is being dilated. But many a times our usual balloons may not be good enough to dilate this successfully, and it may not last long. And so this is after end of the study. You see that this was prior to the study, and this is after the end. There was good dilatation and increase in flow, but still that was not good enough. And then we may have to take them up for open alterations. Easily you can do a proximal AV neoanastomosis and tie the accessory vein if there are any. And it has also been shown that tying is better than doing a angioplasty like this. So if you are doing your AV fistulas, you can see this is the fistula hand, and this was the original AV fistula here, and there was a juxtaanastomotic stenosis here. So I have opened up proximally, and I have done a side-to-side anastomosis and tied the distal end. And so the advantage is you can immediately take this patient for dialysis within a week or so because the veins will be matured. And this is cephalic arch stenosis. By doing a AV fistula angiogram, you can pick up central vein stenosis, about which Hemant will be talking to you at length. But this cephalic arch stenosis is, again, you see the central vein, the axillary vein is fine, but the cephalic arch which comes from your about which Hemant will be talking to you, and this is a complete cutoff in the central vein, which may be difficult for a normal interventionalist to tackle. So you will see that there will be many uses of cath lab for a nephrologist. You can do AVF angios and interventions. You can use it for positioning and manipulating difficult tunnel catheters. You can manipulate across marginal stenosis, put in a guide wire, then put in a tunnel catheter. And for diagnosis and management of central vein problems, then renal artery stenosis, native and transplant artery stenosis, and Conn syndrome and other places where renal vein sampling is needed. If you are good in cath lab work, you can do that easily, sampling from the vein and tackling renal biopsy complications, bleeding in AV fistulas, angionecrosis, and so on. So I think cath lab should be brought into our gambit, and that will help us a lot and making us more confident and actually give total solution for these patients rather depending on others. And I assure you it is not difficult, but the major difficulty is getting access to the cath lab, and that is a practical thing we may have to discuss over time, and how should we get across the practical problems. Because see, in bigger cities it is okay. In smaller towns, I hear from my junior colleagues how difficult it is to even doing PD catheter incision, how they get resistance from surgeons and hospital management doing AV fistulas. In one center, he has been allowed to do only radiocephalic and not brachiocephalic. Like that, they give restrictions. So we should all work together to address these problems and get empower ourselves to get into all these areas. And I'll finish by telling you that interventional nephrology should be need-based. It shouldn't be just for sake of doing and just for not for heroic show off of our potentialities. We should be willing for extra hours of work. And again, safety first, no risks. As Sampath showed, any hundreds or thousand number of catheters, you'll end up with problem one day if you don't take extra care using C-arms and other precautions. So no compromise on essential equipment, and there should be low threshold to abandon procedure and call help. You shouldn't feel egoistic and try to proceed and get into problem. And more importantly, have good rapport with your surgical and radiology colleagues, because that will help you in long run to be a successful interventionalist. Thank you. I think I have taken slightly longer than allotted to me, and we'll have the problems to discuss over these issues at the end. And I'll hand over to Dr. Hemant on central vein and what to approach and how to do by a nephrologist. Thank you. Hemant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Baba. If you can, yeah.